New York City. Summer. 1972. The subway platform beneath 42nd Street was a different kind of arena. Concrete pillars held up a low ceiling. Fluorescent lights flickered over cracked tile. The air was thick, stale, laced with oil and rust and the breath of 10,000 strangers passing through each day. This was not a place for spectacle. This was a place where people moved fast, kept their heads down, and avoided eye contact. Bruce Lee stood near the edge of the platform, waiting for the uptown train. He was alone. No cameras. No crew. No script. Just a man in dark jeans and a plain shirt, hands in his pockets, face calm. He had just finished a meeting about a film project that would eventually become Enter the Dragon. At that moment, he was still fighting for respect. Still proving himself. Still moving through a world that saw him as an outsider. Nobody on that platform knew who he was. The train hadn't arrived yet. People clustered in small groups. Some leaned against the walls. Others paced. A few sat on benches, staring at nothing. The usual rhythm of the city. The usual silence broken only by distant echoes and the metallic hum of the tracks. Then the atmosphere shifted. A man appeared at the far end of the platform. He was enormous. Somewhere around 280 pounds, most of it stacked across his shoulders and chest. His arms were thick. His neck was short. His eyes swept the platform like he owned it. He moved slowly, deliberately, taking up space. People stepped aside without being asked. It was instinct. The kind of deference that size commands without effort. He was what the neighborhood called an enforcer. Someone who worked the streets. Someone whose presence alone was a message. He didn't need a weapon. He didn't need to raise his voice. His body did the talking. He walked directly toward Bruce Lee. Not around him. Not past him. Toward him. Lee didn't move. He stood exactly where he was, hands still in his pockets, gaze forward. Waiting. The big man stopped less than 3 feet away. Close enough that the space between them became a claim. A test. He looked down at Lee. Not with curiosity. With dismissal. Then he spoke. 2 words. Flat. Cold. Final. Move. The platform went quiet. People nearby stopped talking. Stopped walking. They didn't turn to look directly, but their attention shifted. Everyone could feel it. The weight of that moment. The demand hanging in the air. Bruce Lee didn't move. He didn't flinch. Didn't adjust his stance. Didn't respond. He simply stood there, as if the man in front of him didn't exist. The enforcer's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being ignored. He leaned forward, lowering his face closer to Lee's. His voice dropped, harder now, edged with threat. I said move. Still, Bruce Lee did nothing. His hands stayed in his pockets. His breathing was steady. His expression was neutral. But something in his stillness was louder than words. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't aggression. It was certainty. The kind of certainty that doesn't need to prove itself. The big man saw it. And he didn't like it. He stepped even closer, chest almost touching Lee's shoulder, trying to force him backward through proximity alone. It was a tactic that had worked 1,000 times before. Intimidation by mass. Dominance by presence. But Lee didn't move. And in that refusal, something broke. The enforcer's hand came up fast. Not a punch. A shove. Open palm aimed at Bruce's chest, meant to send him stumbling back, meant to reassert control. It was a statement. A declaration. This is my space. You will move. But the hand never connected. Bruce Lee's right hand came out of his pocket in a blur. Not fast like speed. Fast like inevitability. He redirected the shove with a single fluid motion, his forearm sweeping the man's wrist aside. And in the same instant, before the enforcer could process what had happened, Lee's left hand shot forward. A short, compact strike. Palm heel. Straight to the solar plexus. The impact was soft. Almost silent. But the effect was total. The big man's body folded inward. His knees buckled. His mouth opened, gasping, unable to pull air into his lungs. He staggered backward, one hand clutching his chest, the other reaching for the pillar behind him to keep from falling. 6 seconds. Beginning to end. Bruce Lee stepped back. Hands returned to his pockets. His expression hadn't changed. He looked at the man struggling to breathe, and then he looked away, as if the confrontation had already ended in his mind before it began. The platform was frozen. No one spoke. No one moved. They had just witnessed something that shouldn't have been possible. A man twice Lee's size, a man who made his living through intimidation, reduced to gasping against a concrete pillar by a single strike. The enforcer finally got his breath back. Slowly. Painfully. He straightened up, still leaning on the pillar, still holding his ribs. He looked at Bruce Lee. Not with anger. With confusion. With the dawning realization that everything he thought he understood about power had just been rewritten. Lee didn't gloat. Didn't speak. Didn't explain. He simply turned his attention back to the tracks, waiting for the train that would arrive in less than a minute. But the silence on that platform was different now. Heavier. Charged with a truth that no one could articulate but everyone felt. Size is not strength. Mass is not power. Intimidation is not dominance. Those things only work when the person across from you believes in them. Bruce Lee didn't. The train pulled into the station. Brakes screeched. Doors slid open. People filed on, still glancing back at the two men near the pillar. Lee stepped onto the train. The enforcer stayed where he was, still catching his breath, still processing. The doors closed. The train pulled away. And the moment disappeared into the tunnels beneath New York City, carried by a man who never told the story himself. But others did. Slowly. Quietly. In conversations between martial artists who heard it from someone who was there. In whispered retellings among fighters who understood what it meant. In private reflections from people who saw Bruce Lee not as a movie star, but as something far more dangerous. A man who had removed every wasted movement. Every hesitation. Every doubt. The encounter was never filmed. Never documented. Never confirmed by any official record. But the people who were on that platform that day carried it with them. Some of them told their children. Some of them told their students. And the story grew, not because it was exaggerated, but because it was true in the way that matters most. It revealed something. Not about Bruce Lee's speed. Not about his technique. But about the nature of power itself. That real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand space. It doesn't need to prove anything. It simply is. And when it's tested, it responds with precision so total that the test ends before it begins. The enforcer went back to his world. Back to the streets. Back to the corners and the deals and the threats. But people who knew him said he changed after that day. That he stopped relying on size alone. That he became quieter. More cautious. That he carried the memory of being folded in half by a man who barely moved. And Bruce Lee continued on. To his film meetings. To his training. To the work that would eventually make him a global icon. But to him, the subway encounter was nothing special. Just another moment where someone tested him. Another moment where his philosophy proved itself. Because his philosophy wasn't theoretical. It wasn't abstract. It was built through confrontations exactly like this one. Through moments where belief met reality. Where rigidity met fluidity. where force met precision. And every time, the outcome was the same. By 1973, Bruce Lee's fame had eclipsed everything. His films were breaking records. His influence was reshaping martial arts across the world. But the people who knew him before the cameras understood something that the public never fully grasped. The Bruce Lee on screen was a shadow of the Bruce Lee in the subway. The one in the alley. The one in the training hall. The one who moved through the world with a certainty so deep that it required no expression. He never needed to tell people he was dangerous. His stillness told them. The story of the subway enforcer became one of many. A footnote in a legend already crowded with impossible encounters. But for those who were there, it remained the clearest example of what Bruce Lee actually represented. Not a fighter. Not an actor. Not a teacher. A living refutation of the idea that size, aggression, or intimidation mean anything when faced with someone who has eliminated every ounce of wasted motion from their existence. The enforcer learned that in 6 seconds. The people watching learned it in the silence that followed. And the city moved on, unaware that on a subway platform beneath 42nd Street, a truth had been demonstrated that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. That confidence without skill is just noise. That power without precision is just weight. That dominance is not what you claim. It's what remains when the claim is tested. And when the test came, Bruce Lee didn't move. Because he didn't need to. The space was already his.